I think there's a transition that's missed between paediatric care and going into adult care. For a long time, I was with paediatric oncology. I was with paediatric radiology. Every sort of aspect of my life was in paediatrics, even though I was an adult essentially. And now it's switched to the adult side of things, which is, you know, more where I should be, but I feel that there's almost that step between being in the children's side of things and being in the adult side of things that is something that can be missed a little bit. It would have been nice, I guess, to have spoken to someone who could have talked me through how things might change, or just a bit of reassurance, I guess, that the things that I've known for however many years are going to be quite different now that I'm in the adult section of the hospital. I think that's the key stage that I kind of missed, and my mum still comes to all my appointments with me. But it is that thing of going from a child who has cancer, whose parents worry about them non-stop, to being an adult who has had cancer. And as I've got older, I feel like the worries and the anxieties personally for myself have increased because I've just become more aware of the cancer that I have, and what damage chemotherapy can do, and all that sort of stuff.
Another really big part of my bone cancer remission is that where I was 8 when I was diagnosed and had my critical treatment, a lot of my care was paediatric. So although my oncology treatment was a year in length, I had a lot of orthopedic treatment due to the knee replacement that I had as part of my critical treatment. And I had to have it extended a few times, and surgery on my other leg, and a Lazaroff frame. If you know what that is, I'm really sorry. But that lasted up until I was 16. And then when I got to my 10 years in remission, I was also 18. So I think the timing of that really meant that I went from paediatric aftercare to adult long-term effects clinic, all in one swoop, which I found quite difficult. I think because my parents were in charge, as they are with any child, of all of my medical appointments and decisions, all of a sudden it was me making those. And it was at a time when I was moving off to uni, moving to a brand new place, brand new hospitals. I didn't really even know how to keep up with the various things I had to go to in Oxford. I know I missed several appointments because I just couldn't coordinate getting there with my academic calendar, but I wasn't sure how to even cancel it or if I could. And I would often be questioned on the timeline of my surgeries, and I've had like 14 surgeries, so I'm not even sure the year of some of them, just where it was something that I went along to and I wasn't in charge of. So actually having the responsibility of my medical care and my long-term effects was quite sudden, I think, for me at 18 and at uni, when all I wanted to do was go out and forget that it ever happened. That was quite an interesting change. And then sort of after uni, when I got my first job and moved again, I really found that I made it a priority to organise my medical appointments and to make sure to follow them through, to follow up any test results, anything like that, and have them done on time, apart from, of course, the 2 years of COVID. That was quite a steep learning curve for me, and quite an emotional one as well, because I think the less I knew, the better when I was a child, and I think that makes sense. And I think that probably a lot of parents of a child with cancer will do that and protect you from the actual truth and how bad things are, which I'm quite grateful for. But then, of course, when I came to be fully responsible for everything, it was quite an emotional journey as well. especially I think where I'd matured and realised how different my childhood was to my peers, I suppose.
I just want to talk about something that does frustrate me, and that's awareness of bone cancer and its many effects in the medical profession away from bone cancer. And one example of this, I was diagnosed with a kidney stone in 1994. The symptoms arrived one Friday. I'd had 2 or 3 quite bad bouts of pain in my left-hand side. And then early on the Friday evening, I collapsed in agony. My wife phones the local surgery. There's an emergency doctor on call. Off we go to see the doctor. I walk in. The doctor recognises me because she just happened to be a doctor that was on the same ward when I was having my chemotherapy treatment. So she knew my history. She knew I had been through bone cancer treatment. This would have been about 9 years after I finished my treatment. Straight away, she knew there could be some concern there. An ambulance was called and I ended up in A&E, diagnosed with a kidney stone, in hospital for a week. It took its natural course. And I'd look back on that and thinking, had she not have known about my history, I might have just been sent home with painkillers.
So another thing that has come out of being in remission for Ewing sarcoma is sort of my, I suppose, attitude towards healthcare professionals. So with not particularly trusting them due to misdiagnosis. I find it quite difficult, I suppose. I have a lot of appointments still, and every time I have to explain my whole medical history, and there's a lot of questions. I know before I saw a physio and they googled my diagnosis in front of me, which I thought was quite strange and led to that lack of trust, but of course it's so rare.
Just going back to the GP awareness thing, I was on holiday in Portugal. It was in 2014, and walking down a steep slope, fairly loose surface, and my foot just slipped slightly, didn't fall. I felt a twinge at the original tumour site. Over the next few weeks, the pain got worse and worse, and I was struggling to put weight on the leg. So off I go to the GP, tell him what's happened. He says, "You've probably twisted your knee." I says, "No, I don't think so. I think I've done something to my femur because of the history of bone cancer and what I've been through, all the surgery." He says, "No, it'll be your knee." He insisted it was my knee. He wouldn't listen to me and told me to go away and do some knee exercises, which didn't help. Go back to see another GP, and he said, there's obviously something wrong. We need to get it x-rayed. So I had it x-rayed. A week later, I get a phone call asking me to go to the city hospital to the oncology department, which was quite concerning. I saw a consultant and physiotherapy there. He apologised for the fact it was an oncology department, and he was sorry that it caused me any concern. He says, "But we do specialise in lumps and bumps on bones, and you've got lots of lumps and bumps on your bones. But I can tell you now, there is nothing for concern, but it looks like you suffered a stress fracture," which is what I thought it was in the first place. Now, if the first GP had thought more about the implications of bone cancer, maybe the stress fracture could have been treated properly in the first place. And I look back on that now and wonder if that led on to more complications, because not long after that, I started to suffer from foot drop, which is where I can't lift my foot properly. And if you lift your leg up, the foot drops to the floor, and it can be very awkward and can cause you to fall and trip and so on. So I did get referral to a podiatrist, and I was given this brace to wear, which basically straps around the lower leg and hooks onto the shoe to help you lift your foot when you're walking. I found it very uncomfortable and didn't wear it all the time, the consequence of which I had a very bad fall. And it was very close to home. Somebody brought me home in a car. My wife phoned 111, the paramedic was called, and out it came. I was diagnosed with 2 cracked ribs, an internal bruising, a few other scratches and so on. And I said, I think I might have damaged my femur. It could be a stress fracture, because as I fell, it was like a whiplash action, and I felt that same pain at the tumour site. He says, no, you've not. You won't be able to stand up. I tried to explain to him about the titanium rods holding my femur together and so on, but no, he says, you've definitely not done anything to your femur. Nothing against the paramedic, I think they do a wonderful job. The pain gets worse and worse. I recover from the cracked ribs and so on, so I end up yet again, I think I went to see the GP twice before they referred me for x-rays, referred back to an orthopaedic consultant who said, I can't see any evidence of anything on your x-ray, but we'll give you an MRI scan. Again, I said, I thought it might have been a stress fracture, and he said, no, it wouldn't have been. So I then have the MRI scan, which was January, which is now 5 months after the fall. I get called back in for the results of the MRI scan in March, which is 6-7 months after the original fall, for this consultant to tell me, I'm very sorry to tell you, Mr. Harley, it looks like the cancer's returned, but we'll get you referred to Birmingham Royal Orthopaedic Hospital. So I go for my appointment there. A few weeks later, they were absolutely fantastic there, a wonderful team of people. And yet again, I was told, no cause for concern, it looks like you've had a stress fracture. I just wish, looking back on those now, that I'd had, they'd listened to me and accepted it might have been a stress fracture, and maybe my leg could have been supported so that just to allow the bone to heal properly.
I didn't have a late effects clinic as such to go to. I saw a nurse, an oncology nurse who's lovely, who gave me lots of leaflets and sent me away. But aside from that, I've not really had a place to go to kind of have all my late effects sorted in one go. It does seem that everything is quite fragmented. I see my cardiologist once a year, and I see my surgeon every 5 years in Birmingham. But aside from that, there's nowhere to really go to speak to people about the late effects of chemotherapy.
One thing I have definitely felt being in long-term bone cancer remission was that there was quite a steep fall of support just after going into remission. So during critical treatment, of course, all of your treatment is really high priority. You have a lot of medical teams looking after you at various hospitals, and everything is really efficiently coordinated for the most part. And then as soon as you go into remission, you very much fall on the priority list, which sort of results in having fewer appointments that have, I suppose, a really substantial outcome, and having to chase a lot of appointments and follow-ups, including results for tests and things like that, which I think a lot of primary bone cancer patients who've been in remission for a while definitely feel the same way after speaking with them. Is that sort of a year after treatment you have quite a lot of support still, and then once you reach 5 years, of course, the chance of your cancer coming back as a secondary reduces quite a lot, and therefore you have way fewer appointments and way fewer tests, which is of course really good and exciting things at some points of the journey, but it can also result in, and certainly did for me, a feeling of a lack of safety net and a lack of, I suppose, care from those teams that used to be really on hand at all times. You then become, I suppose, a more normal patient for them to see as and when, and that definitely led on to things like health anxiety, where you go from being scanned every 3 months to make sure everything is okay, to 6 months to a year, and then it's up to you when you have them after 10 years. I suppose it was for me, that might depend on your treatment, but not having that reassurance of a clear scan every so often can really weigh on you. I know it does on me still, 16 years in, so that is definitely something that I've experienced.
When I finished treatment, it was almost like a drop off. It was almost like the hospital was my safety net, and I didn't have anything after that for a long time. So when you're going through treatment, you're almost on this treadmill where you have constant appointments, you're always taking your temperature, you understand everything about your body, you know what your platelet levels are, you know everything about your body, you know how exactly your body's working, and then it stops and you're discharged and it's not there anymore. Your calendar's not full up of all these appointments, and it is quite a shock to the system because it's almost like you're pushed back into normal life. And I think people assume that you are better now because you've gone through it, you come out the other side, and it was only then for me that the psychological impact of it and the mental impact of it really crept up on me. I started a blog when I was in university. I was doing a creative writing degree along with English, and I started my blog as a way to share my creative writing, and on there I shared some pieces about having cancer, and decided that I would actually build out a little section of the website to appeal to people who are going through cancer treatment or have been through cancer treatment. And I've kind of dipped in and out of it over the years, but I now have an Instagram where I talk about these things too, because I think it's important to address them. When I was actually having the counselling at university as well, something that the counsellor asked me was how I process things emotionally, and I said that I write to kind of get my feelings across. I write and I journal, and she asked me to write a poem about my dad, and I did, and that was very cathartic. So for me, writing has always been one of those ways to kind of get my feelings out and express myself, but also connect with others who may have gone through something similar.
Going back to the early days, of course, there was no internet available when I was first diagnosed, so there was very little information available about bone cancer. Maybe that could have been a good thing, because probably in the early years I never actually appreciated just how ill I really was. But then in later years I started searching on the internet just to find out a bit about it, and in some ways it was quite frightening. But through that I joined a Facebook site called Ewing Sarcoma Survivors, predominantly American. It was quite interesting, and started to put a few posts on there, just giving details of what I'd been through, and just hopefully helping a few people. Through that I found out about a project where a consultant from Southampton General Hospital had got some funding to put together a National Ewing's multidisciplinary team meeting involving consultants, radiographers, survivors, patients and so on. And I applied to go on that, and a few weeks later I find myself down at this meeting in London. When I arrive, having a cup of coffee, and I meet this guy. Like me, he had Ewing sarcoma some years ago. He was also wearing a brace on his leg for foot drop, like me, and that was the first time I'd ever met anybody that had been through bone cancer. And that was quite a surreal experience. And during the meeting, also for the very first time, I was asked to talk about what I'd been through, and that was the first time I'd really spoke about it in public. Because I do find people don't want to really hear about it on a day-to-day basis. If somebody says, "Oh, how are you?" you don't say, "Oh, my leg's, I'm suffering with my leg today because I had bone cancer." Mention bone cancer, it can be a conversation stopper. So at that meeting, I also meet another guy who was also a long-term survivor like myself, and we've now become very good friends, and we keep in touch on a regular basis. We meet up for a coffee, a bite of lunch, or keep in contact by phone, and it's just an opportunity to talk about various side effects and how we cope with them and so on. And I would advise that to anyone. It's just a great way just to put your mind at rest and so on.
A big part of my life now, being 16 years in bone cancer remission, is that I actually work for a cancer charity. I work for Young Lives versus Cancer in fundraising, and I think it's really lovely to use my experience in a positive way, and I always used to do that with fundraising personally. I always did that at school. I found it was really a good tool to bring up my cancer experience in a way that was quite positive. I've done a lot of volunteering with sharing my story and things like that. And one last thing about the long-term effects of primary bone cancer is that I felt really isolated and alone for ages, my whole teenagehood, and then started going to the Bone Cancer Research Trust conferences, which I really look forward to. They're a big part of my annual calendar, and from there I've created a really nice support network of peers, and we all follow each other on social media, so it's really nice to keep up with them in between conferences as well. I really appreciate that, and because it's so rare, you're not going to find someone by chance, I suppose, that's had a primary bone cancer or a similar treatment pathway to you. So yeah, I really appreciate going to the conferences and meeting everyone. It's so nice to get all together in person, especially, and then to carry on social media from there. I found that has really helped with me feeling part of something actually really nice and positive, and a lot of my feelings being understandable. I think, although awful to know that people have faced the same issues, it's really reassuring to see how they've worked through them and how they think about them from their point of view. So I find that really useful.
Bone Cancer Research Trust have been an amazing charity over the last few years that I've kind of worked with them and understood what they're all about. I would say to just keep doing what they're doing, raise up more awareness of what they do in Wales, because I think we can really fly the flag for Welsh cancer patients. And also, if I would suggest anything, it would be, and you may already have this, it would be to have a professional who you can speak to about late effects, who you can kind of check in with every now and again to see how you're getting on straight after your treatment, but years down the line as well. I think I would still find that useful now to have someone to talk to, because the difficulty is as well is that my mum remembers the doctor saying certain things, I remember certain things. You look on the internet and it's a totally different story, and there's no person that you can kind of just go to and say, what is the likelihood of this happening, or what were the risks associated with the drugs that I had. Sometimes you just want to talk to somebody about those things. So yeah.
I met Zoe Davidson from the Bone Cancer Research Trust, and basically she said, "We want you to get involved." So I did, and I've become a supporter of the Bone Cancer Research Trust, and that they are a fantastic team of people. And along with my wife, we regularly attend the virtual cuppers, which are done on Zoom every Wednesday afternoon. It's just nice to be there and just give a little bit of help to people that are going through bone cancer. And I'll advise anybody, if they have the opportunity, to join in on the virtual cuppers. They are absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, one thing I think is really important for me with the Bone Cancer Research Trust is that there isn't a cut-off for calling the support line with anything you need. And by cut-off, I mean that a lot of charities, and they have to do this due to capacity and workload, but you're not eligible for a lot of cancer charity support after a certain number of years or months even in remission. You qualify for support on critical treatment, and usually for a few months or years after, but then they can't offer you long-term support, and they're also not equipped to. So I think it's really great that at BCRT you can call the support line or you can email them with anything. So I think it's really great that anyone can get in touch with the support team. And that was 16 years into remission, but it was a really prevalent problem that I was having on that day after that appointment. And I know that if I have another appointment of that nature, I can get in touch. I had quite a I suppose worrying orthopaedic appointment recently, and I was speaking to everyone at the bone cancer conference about that, and it was really, I mean, obviously horrible that people have been through something similar, but just really like comforting to be able to speak to someone who understood. Because as much as I can speak to my sister or my boyfriend about a troublesome orthopaedic appointment, they've never had that. And as supportive as they are, it is difficult to know that it's obviously really rare, so it's quite lonely in those issues, but having the peer support network that BCRT provides with their lovely conferences is really something that I rely on 17 years down the line. So yeah, I think that's really great and really important, and really shows that BCRT have a really thorough understanding of the struggles that primary bone cancer patients face, and that's why it's lifelong. So yeah, I think that's really important, and I think that's everything. So thank you so much.
I hope that was okay. Thank you.
So I think I've come to about an end of what I have to say there. But before I finish, I'd just like to say thank you very much to the Bone Cancer Research Trust and of course the medical students involved in this project at Sheffield. And I really appreciate given the opportunity to sort of open up and talk about the journey I've been through. Thank you very much.